They won't walk away from you. No, that would be too honest, too direct, too revealing. Instead, they'll craft a slow-motion execution of the relationship, one tiny cut at a time. They'll never look you in the eyes and say, "I'm done." What they will do is hollow you out, piece by piece, until staying feels like slow self-destruction. This is the secret of the avoidant partner. They don't end relationships. They engineer their own abandonment. They don't break up with you. They build a stage where you're forced to break up with them. And if you don't understand this design, you'll confuse their sabotage for mixed feelings or emotional overwhelm, when in reality it's a carefully crafted exit strategy. Think about it. If they left you outright, they'd be the one who quit, the one who couldn't commit, the one exposed as incapable of intimacy. That would make them the villain, and nothing terrifies the avoidant more than facing their own emotional cowardice. So instead, they twist the script. They need you to leave. They need you to speak the final words. That way, they can retreat into victimhood, telling themselves and everyone else, "I was abandoned." This is not indecision. It's not confusion. It's not inconsistency. It's psychological theater. They play both the saboteur and the victim, while you're cast as the heartless deserter. And the more you love them, the more devastating the performance becomes. Because make no mistake, with an avoidant, your pain is not collateral damage. It's the mechanism. They need you to leave them. And the longer you stay blind to this truth, the more perfectly you'll play the role they wrote for you. Avoidant partners don't storm out. They don't slam the door and end it in one clean cut. That would take courage. That would mean taking responsibility for the destruction. And responsibility is the one thing they refuse to carry. Instead, they design what I call the invisible exit strategy. A quiet, almost surgical dismantling of intimacy. You won't even notice it at first, because it doesn't come as a dramatic fight or a loud announcement. It comes as distance, silence, subtle withdrawals that feel like shadows creeping in. They stop holding your hand without saying why. Their "I love yous" become fewer, colder, almost rehearsed. Their texts slow down. Their eyes drift away. Their presence feels like absence. You'll ask what's wrong, and they'll tell you nothing. "I'm just tired. I've been stressed. I need space." And you'll believe them, because the changes are small, almost invisible. But these small fractures are not random. They are intentional cracks in the foundation, created to make the walls eventually collapse. Avoidants rarely break up openly, because that would force them to admit they are leaving, and leaving would mean admitting they couldn't handle closeness. So instead they drain the relationship of warmth until commitment becomes unbearable. They don't walk away. You crawl out, exhausted and starved. The brilliance, no, the cruelty of this strategy is that it disguises itself as confusion. They appear unsure, overwhelmed, maybe even scared of how much they feel. But this isn't uncertainty. It's architecture. They're building a back door out of the relationship plank by plank, excuse by excuse. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've already been maneuvered into a trap. Either you keep begging for scraps of intimacy until you break, or you finally leave, and they get exactly what they wanted. Because remember the title truth. Avoidant partners need you to leave them. It's not that they can't end it. It's that they won't. They need you to play executioner so they can keep their hands clean. They disappear without leaving. Abandon without saying goodbye. Sabotage without ever confessing it was deliberate. That's the invisible exit. And it's the first chapter in their carefully scripted plan to make you the villain of their story. Ending a relationship outright would take a spine. It would mean standing there, looking you in the eyes, and admitting "I don't want this anymore." But avoidant partners don't do that. Why? Because in that moment, they become the villain, the deserter, the one who couldn't handle intimacy, the one who quit. And the avoidant cannot bear to see themselves as the executioner of love. So they hand you the weapon. They orchestrate the destruction, but they need you to pull the trigger. It's not an accident. It's delegation. A coward's delegation. They set the stage, dim the lights, and write the script. But you are forced to speak the final words. It's over. How do they pull this off? Chaos. Subtle, deliberate chaos. They pick fights over nothing. They roll their eyes at your needs. They disappear when you're vulnerable, reappear when you've pulled away. They drip feed affection, just enough to keep you confused, but withdraw enough to keep you starving. And every time you try to call it out, they act bewildered. I don't know what you mean. You're overreacting. Why are you so dramatic? The plan is simple. Wear you down, push you to the edge, then stand back innocently when you finally break. When you say, I can't do this anymore, they exhale in relief, because you've freed them. You've done the dirty work they were too afraid to do themselves. And here's the sinister genius. By making you end it, they get to keep their mask intact. They get to tell themselves, and anyone who listens, I didn't leave, I was left. They become the wounded party, the misunderstood soul, the tragic victim of someone else's impatience. But the truth, the title reveals, is this: avoidant partners need you to leave them, not because they're powerless, but because they're terrified of being seen as the destroyer. They want the escape, without the guilt, the freedom, without the blood on their hands. So they delegate, they maneuver, they sabotage, and in the end, when you finally say what they've been too afraid to admit, they stand back as if to say, see, I never left. You abandoned me. That's not confusion. That's not fear. That's strategy. And it's the hallmark of a coward. Avoidant partners don't abandon you in one decisive blow. There's no grand breakup scene, no final confrontation where everything ends at once. That would be too obvious, too traceable back to them. Instead, they choose erosion. Slow, invisible, devastating erosion. Affection doesn't disappear overnight. It fades gradually, almost imperceptibly. At first it's fewer hugs, less eye contact, kisses that feel mechanical instead of alive. Then it's excuses for why they can't spend time together. Work's been crazy. I'm exhausted. I just need space. You don't realize it, but touch by touch, hour by hour, they are starving the relationship of oxygen. No single moment feels like abandonment, because they never rip the cord all at once. Instead, it's a drip feed of absence. You keep telling yourself, it's just a phase, they'll come back, things will get better. But the phase never ends. It only deepens. And that's the cruel brilliance of the erosion tactic. It convinces you that nothing definitive is happening, while everything is quietly dying. You can't point to one explosion, one betrayal, one act of finality. Instead, you wake up one day and realize the bond is already skeletal, hollowed out from the inside. This slow starvation leaves you trapped. If you protest, they call you clingy or dramatic. If you stay silent, you wither in the silence they've manufactured. Either way, the outcome is the same. Your needs are suffocated until you can't survive in the relationship anymore. And remember the truth behind the title. Avoidant partners need you to leave them. This erosion tactic is how they guarantee it. They don't have to confess, I can't handle closeness. They just slowly remove the closeness, until you're gasping for air, until you're the one forced to walk away. The cruelest part, they'll act surprised when you do. They'll shrug, as if they don't understand why you couldn't endure the starvation a little longer. But deep down, this was always the plan. Not to kill the relationship outright, but to erode it until you begged for the mercy of escape. That's not neglect. That's not confusion. That's strategy by erosion. And it's one of the most insidious ways avoidant partners script their own abandonment. Avoidant partners don't simply pull away and stay gone. That would make it too easy for you to see the truth. Too easy for you to leave decisively. Instead, they weaponize inconsistency. Warmth one day, ice the next. They give you just enough affection to keep hope alive, then vanish into cold withdrawal to keep their exit strategy intact. It feels like confusion. It looks like mood swings. But it's neither. It's controlled instability. A deliberate cycle designed to keep you off balance, exhausted, and questioning your own perception. One night they'll hold you close, speak softly, maybe even promise a future. Your heart unclenches. You think, finally, the connection is back. But before you can breathe in that relief, they vanish. Calls go unanswered, messages get shorter, their energy turns flat. The person who swore they cared now acts as if you're a burden. This cycle keeps you trapped in a cruel rhythm of craving. You start chasing the highs, waiting desperately for the return of warmth, tolerating the cold spells, because you've been conditioned to believe the real them is the affectionate one. But here's the brutal truth. Both versions are real. The warmth isn't proof of their love. It's bait to keep you from walking away before they're ready. And here's where it ties to the title. Why avoidant partners need you to leave them. The mixed signals are how they prime you for that final act. By giving hope and snatching it away, they exhaust your emotional reserves. They don't want to break up openly. They want you so drained, so destabilized, that leaving feels like your own decision. This isn't inconsistency. It's orchestration. A push-pull dance designed to keep escape possible while keeping responsibility far from their hands. They get to say, I never left. I was here the whole time, even as you drown in their absence. The weapon of mixed signals is emotional torture in disguise. It's not love struggling with fear. It's manipulation disguised as complexity. And unless you call it what it is, you'll keep mistaking their chaos for depth and their cruelty for confusion. Here's the final insult. After starving the relationship, after drowning you in mixed signals, after orchestrating your breaking point, when you finally say, I can't do this anymore, the avoidant doesn't own their sabotage. They put on the mask of the victim. Suddenly, the story isn't about how they withdrew, withheld, and dismantled the bond piece by piece. No, the story becomes about how you were too needy, too impatient, too demanding. They frame your desperation for basic connection as unreasonable, your cry for stability as weakness, your boundary as betrayal. And because you're exhausted, because you've been gaslit for months, part of you wonders if they're right. Maybe you did expect too much. Maybe love really is supposed to feel this hollow, that doubt is their shield. It lets them walk away with their self-image intact, while you're left dissecting your own worth. This is the brilliance and the cowardice of the victim mask. It rewrites history. They erase their sabotage and replace it with a narrative where they were simply misunderstood. They'll tell friends, she just couldn't handle my complexity, or he was too clingy, I needed space. Notice what's missing. Any mention of the emotional starvation, the silent treatment, the manipulation. And here's where the title hits hardest. Why avoidant partners need you to leave them. They can't risk being the one to walk away, because then they'd be the villain. So they orchestrate your exit, and then slip into the victim role to keep their hands clean. To the outside world, they weren't the architect of destruction. They were the abandoned soul who just couldn't be loved properly. The victim mask is the final move in their strategy. It protects their ego, garners sympathy, and leaves you questioning yourself long after they've gone. They don't just want you to leave. They want to leave you carrying the blame. This isn't confusion. This isn't emotional complexity. It's a performance. And the avoidant is both the actor and the director. They authored the breakup, but in their version of the script, you're the villain, and they're the misunderstood hero. At the core of every avoidant sabotage lies a terror so deep it dictates every move. If you truly see me, you'll reject me. That's the wound they carry. The conviction that intimacy will always end in exposure, and exposure will always end in abandonment. So what's their twisted solution? They orchestrate their own abandonment. They push you away, suffocate you with withdrawal, drain the relationship of safety and connection, until you finally break. And when you do, they get the one thing they've been craving all along. Proof that they were right. Proof that closeness is dangerous. Proof that in the end everyone leaves. But notice the sleight of hand. By engineering conditions so toxic that you're forced to leave, they protect their ego. They don't have to face the crushing belief, I wasn't enough. Instead they rewrite it into, I was abandoned. That shift matters. In their mind it preserves their lovability. It's easier to be the wounded soul who was left than the flawed partner who drove love away. This is why avoidant partners need you to leave them. It's not an accident, not just fear of commitment. It's a carefully constructed psychological defense. By making you walk out, they dodge accountability and preserve the illusion that they were never the problem. Love itself was. The cruel irony, being left protects their ego, but it destroys intimacy. Every relationship becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They fear rejection, so they engineer rejection. They crave connection, but sabotage anyone who gets too close. And the cycle repeats again and again, leaving behind a trail of partners who wonder what they did wrong. This isn't unconscious fumbling. It's not someone confused about what they want. It's a system, a psychological firewall built to keep love out, while protecting a fragile self-image. They would rather orchestrate abandonment than risk being truly seen. And until you understand this psychology, you'll keep mistaking sabotage for struggle, manipulation for complexity. The truth is simpler and darker. The avoidant destroys intimacy to protect their ego, even if it means ensuring the very abandonment they claim to fear. The most dangerous lie the avoidant tells is that this cycle is out of their control, that they're just scared, just overwhelmed, just not ready. But once you see the pattern for what it really is, manipulation disguised as fear, the spell breaks. Because the truth is brutal. They are not confused. They are calculated. Every withdrawal, every mixed signal, every half-hearted apology is part of an escape plan where you carry the guilt and they keep their hands clean. And the only way to end it is to refuse the role they've written for you. Stop carrying both sides of the relationship. Stop explaining away their distance. Stop filling in the gaps they leave. Stop doing the emotional labor of two people. That's not love. That's self-erasure. Breaking the cycle means confronting them directly, stripping away the victim mask they hide behind. Say it plainly. If you want out, say it. I won't be your exit strategy. Watch how their facade cracks when you force them to either own their sabotage or admit their truth. Here's where the title cuts through. Why avoidant partners need you to leave them. Because the moment you refuse to leave on their terms, the game collapses. They either have to face accountability, maybe for the first time in their life, or lose the comfort of painting you as the villain. And if they still won't step up, then you protect yourself. You stop waiting for clarity from someone who profits from your confusion. You stop letting their fear dictate your worth. Walking away on your own terms isn't being the villain. It's reclaiming your sanity from someone who thrived on dismantling it. Breaking the cycle doesn't guarantee saving the relationship, but it does guarantee saving yourself. It turns their coward strategy into a mirror they can't escape. They'll either rise to meet you with honesty, or reveal that they never intended to. Either way, you walk away with the one thing they could never give you: truth, and that's the real ending. Not being cast in their story as the one who abandoned them, but standing in your own story as the one who refused to be manipulated into carrying the weight of their fear.